I have not, I guess, received a response back from Skillmore at this time. So I guess if she does respond or does hop on, she can join the meeting. So at this point in time, we'll call the meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is, I mean, seeing as we have quorum, everyone here, with the exception of Ms. Gilmore, we will go to the agenda approval. Vice Chair Mendez, I believe that there is an amendment that you would like to make.
Yes, I'd like to put a new item in after adoption of minutes. That would be a discussion of the proposed amendment to the interim hearing procedures. That could be followed by public comments on that specific issue. And then we could vote to adopt or not adopt. So we just stick that right in there, all those three things right in there after item 3.
Okay. I'm sorry, did you make a motion on that?
Yeah, I move to insert insert a discussion of the amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Robinson, could you pull the board, please?
Oh, may I ask a question first about the public comment, please?
Yes, Member Carpenter.
Okay. Normally that public comment, I guess, would be for general topics, but Bill wants to make that public comment specific for the amendment. Will we have a separate general comment session before the one at the bottom of the agenda to allow for general comment early in the meeting like we usually do?
There is a subsequent, so there's a second public comment after the assistant chief's comments there. The initial ones are going to go through the finance report and then the executive director's introduction. So I think there is a
okay.
Yeah, and I have no, I mean, if I'm just grasping at a GSD opportunity here. If people think this is an important time to have general comments, I don't have any objection. But I think we're going to have plenty of general comment opportunities later on.
Yeah, thank you. That's clarifying for me. Thank you.
Very well. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Robinson, could you pull the board?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Dr. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
And Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Okay, so that adjustment or that amendment passes with the amendment to the hearing procedures discussion coming after the adoption of the minutes, which happens to be the next item on the agenda. Are there any questions? Yes.
Well, you may have noticed, folks, that there aren't any minutes because I haven't gotten them done yet. As you're aware, there were extensive comments last time, and I'm still working to deal with those. You will get them at the next meeting.
Very well, that's my oversight. There, and let's see what this is here. Okay. And then the next item would obviously be the amendment to the hearing procedures, and Vice Chair Mendez, I'll let you open the floor on that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeff Frazier and I had a 2-on-2 meeting on Friday afternoon with Councilman Snook and Payne to try and set the stage as much as we could for the October 26th work session with Council. And one of the things that we agreed on was that it would be nice to get these interim hearing procedures kind of done and out of the way, so that on the 26th, we could deal specifically with the ordinance and not be, held back. And we then went on and talked about what their major concerns were with the interim hearing procedures. And the only thing that they wanted was that, and I'll just read it, hearings that are convened to address complaint review requests under Section 261 of the board's enabling ordinance will be presided over by hearing officers with professional experience in mediation, labor, civil rights law, police oversight, or other relevant areas of jurisdiction. Hearing officers will be engaged by the city manager as prescribed in Section 256, yada, yada, yada. Sorry. In selecting hearing officers, the city manager will consult with the executive director of the CRB and will take due precautions to avoid bias, conflict of interest, or the appearance thereof. So I think this is a kind of a useful and constructive addition to the hearing procedures. Recommended putting it in as Section 1H, as a new Section 1H. And I'll move to that effect, that the board adopt new Section 1H of the interim hearing procedures and forward that to the city council. And then I guess we can start talking about it. And Jeff, I know you may have some more insights as to how this came about. So,
Yeah, I would just ask you to clarify, Mr. Vice Chair, that this is a, I don't want to say one-shot deal, but and as you said, interim amendment so that we can process the pending matters and do so in a way that, as the counselors pointed out, also sort of takes care of a multitude of sins in terms of other concerns that they have raised. So there's also an element of just expediency in here in terms of getting it done. Things are sitting around. It's not a good look. So I would just add that. And I don't know if Ms. Hudson has any thoughts about it in terms of
not
legal
substantively.
implications.
Procedurally, I would suggest that the chair solicit a second to make your discussion.
Sorry.
No substantive addition.
I second.
Very well. We have a second. Dr. Frazier, I don't know if you have any additional comments.
No, I just jumped the gun on that. My apologies, but I just wanted to have Bill clarify that, or maybe I clarified it.
yeah, this is not operating procedures, which are down the road.
Down the road. Yeah.
This is just for this one single hearing. And we went and we discussed with the counselors the availability of such hearing officers, and we all kind of decided, we concluded that there is a large pool of retired judges, magistrates, lawyers, in administrative law judges in Central Virginia, who quite frequently act in capacities like this. And so that there's no anticipation, and this group is quite diverse. So that there wouldn't be a problem with finding an acceptably qualified individual.
I've got a question for Mr. Aguilar about Fairfax, and when you guys had hearings in Fairfax, did you have the same type of setup, same type of person participate?
Good evening. Thank you for the question. In Fairfax, so there was a semantics difference. We didn't have hearings, we had meetings. And that was intentional to make sure that we didn't, we addressed the concerns of the local elected officials there with what the boundaries were for civilian oversight. So at our meetings, we invited a complainant to come in and express why they wanted a review request, and it invited the police department and or the representative in the police department to tell us what the complaint was about, how the investigation was handled, and then we would deliberate after hearing both sides. In a different model though in DC, where I served as an investigator, we did have hearings that were administered by a hearing complaint examiner. And that complaint examiner was a member of the bar, and they oversaw the process of the hearings.
And also Fairfax has an independent police auditor, right?
That's correct.
Who would be participating in some of these, meetings in an official capacity.
Bill, I have a couple of questions, but I think one was just answered by Mr. Aguilar about what does it mean to preside. And I was really having a tough time with the word officer, hearing officer, but if we could maybe look at the language about examiner. Examiner sounds.
No, sure. Yeah, we don't, there is no implication that this is a policeman. If you want to make a friendly amendment to change that word to hearing examiner or hearing examiners, I will accept it.
Okay, maybe in just a second. I do have one other question. Is there, explain to me how long this amendment to that hearing procedure will be in effect? I know you called it the interim hearing procedures, but maybe for the public to kind of give a timeline, like, does this process have a examiner model have a sunset clause, so to speak?
It has a sunset clause in the sense that it will remain in effect until we can get a new ordinance and set of operating procedures in place.
Thank you. And I would like to make that friendly amendment to maybe change the wording of hearing officer to a hearing examiner throughout the little amendment.
I accept.
Thank
Is there
you.
a second?
I
Okay.
A second?
Okay. Ms. Hudson, that's procedurally correct. Is that very well?
That works. You'll be voting first on the motion as amended.
Very well.
I mean, it's a friendly amendment, so by consensus, unless anyone objects to that amendment, then you can carry it forward as the main motion.
Very well. Are there any objections? Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Ms. Robinson.
we did say that the public would get a shot at it.
Oh, so are we so when would the voting take place?
After the next after this coming public comment.
Okay.
We just come right back to the issue and take a vote.
Very well. So do that. So we'll table that vote until public comment is concluded. Mr. Wheeler, would you open up the floor for public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have 14 people in the audience. If you'd like to address the PCRB on this matter, please click the raise hand icon in the Zoom webinar. Each person will get up to 3 minutes. The first person up is Don Gathers. Don, you're on with the PCRB and you've got 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. I just need a moment of clarity. Being the Civilian Review Board, I just need some understanding as to how this will benefit civilians, this particular amendment, because it's just not clear to me how this is at all beneficial to the public, a public that's already leery of of law enforcement in every particular aspect. And we're talking about bringing in essence, another person with a history or background in law enforcement. So I'm just trying to understand how this is at all beneficial to the process of helping civilians. Thank you.
Mr. Wheeler, might I suggest, I mean, I can answer some of these questions, but I might want to wait until we hear from some other people and I can address them all at once.
Thank you, Mr. Mendez. If anyone else would like to address the PCRB, please click the raise hand icon now. I don't see any additional hands.
Very well. So that section of public comment is closed. Vice Chair Mendez will give you the opportunity to answer. If you
the answer is that it will, the reason is that it will help our totally amateur board conduct hearings in a way that assure due process for both the complainants and the subject officers. Because one of my, what I've been, looking at over the last couple of months is, hearing or meeting reports from Fairfax and other organizations throughout the country, and the proceedings can get complex. And I think that having, for this single case, a hearing examiner who will be vetted to make sure they have no conflict of interest. I mean, we may get a civil rights lawyer, if they're available and if we decide that that's the best. So that's how it benefits civilians. And again, this is only for one proceeding.
If I could just add a comment, Mr. Chair, based upon our meeting Friday.
Yes, absolutely, Dr. Frazier.
It need not be someone, Mr. Mendez said vetted, it need not be someone, for instance, that has had any criminal judicial experience. It could be an administrative law judge who works with the Department of Social Services when there's an appeal of one of their findings on child custody or child removal or whatever. So it need not be someone that has had experience or interaction with police. The speaker alluded to that, and I would just want to clarify that we have the option to make sure we choose someone A, that is neutral, and B, doesn't necessarily have criminal law experience. It's really to keep the perception of the hearing as fair and balanced as possible, knowing that those of us on the board might have different points of view. How do we conduct that as amateurs, as Mr. Mendez said? So just wanted to throw that into the mix.
And there's one more aspect of how it benefits civilians. It benefits civilians by getting this off our plate. And by allowing us to essentially, and I don't want to oversell this because none of the councilors are here, but they basically said, you put this amendment in, I will put it on the agenda. And that's the first time that we've heard that. So that's one of the reasons, how we benefit civilians.
Ms. Hudson, I don't know if you had any comments about the value of having a hearing examiner or a third party presiding that maybe you could add to the conversation.
From my review, there is no prohibition on the board taking this approach as it relates to the comments regarding the qualifications or the manner of selection of a hearing examiner or hearing officer. There are a number of examples or models in the existing code for sources of hearing examiners, hearing officers. for instance, you could take a page from the state grievance procedure that has a provision whereby localities who choose to use a hearing, and I'm going to say a hearing officer because that's the term that's used in the code. The request may be made to the executive secretary of the Supreme Court of Virginia, which maintains a list of persons who are willing and qualified to perform those kinds of services for local governments and bodies of local government. And clearly those are matters that could be left to the to further operating procedures as it relates to this subject. Again, there's no legal prohibition that I'm aware of on your taking this approach, and I believe there will be resources from which you can decide how a hearing examiner is selected.
Very well. Are there any additional comments or questions on the hearing or the amendment to the hearing procedures?
I'd like to call a question.
Yes, Vice Chair.
Yeah, so that, I mean, I'm asking for a vote.
Oh, all right, very well. So Miss Robinson, would you pull the board?
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter,
Yes.
Dr. Frazier,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
and Mr. Watson.
Yes.
Very well. So that amendment does pass along with the friendly amendment by Ms. Carpenter. Next item on the agenda is the status of the complaints. Currently, we've had 20 cases that have come to the PCRB this year, either through CPD or through complainants directly. 17 of those are closed. 3 of those remain open. Since our last meeting, we've had 1 case that was reported through the CPD of a Black female who stated during a search warrant that the police officers were not wearing a mask, and they removed a legally registered firearm and a camera. And that's the only one that we've had in the interim. Are there any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Mendez.
Yeah, I noticed you know that at least one commenter asked for additional information about what proportion of the complaints that have been received came from various sources. We just actually got a new batch covering the summer, so I haven't had a chance to go through the last 3 months worth. But for the first 6 months of this year, the Internal Affairs Department reported that they received 17 externally generated complaints. Excuse me, that was for the last 6 months of last year. They received 17 externally generated complaints, and we got 10 of those, which is 60%. And as has been pointed out in the past, the fact that we don't get all the complaints is not surprising, because the current complaint form in bold letters tells people that if they submit it to the CRB, it could become public, and that is something that we're working on, and perhaps our executive director will address in a few minutes.
Very well. Are there any additional comments regarding this section? Seeing as we have none, the next item on the agenda is the finance report. Hasn't really changed much since the last reporting, of roughly of 200,000 and a lump sum appropriations for operating expenses. The most recent report has about $15,840 for legal fees, $18,640 for other expenses, and working to find out what those other expenses consist of. Are there any questions regarding that?
Just thinking, I'm looking at the spreadsheet, and I think, is the 18,000, is that the sum of the, no, I guess not.
Is that?
No, it isn't. No, that's not. Okay, never mind.
Very well. Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing as we have none, the next item on the agenda is the introduction of the executive director. And as most of the public knows, Mr. Hansel Aguilar is the executive director of the PCRB. And we thank him for coming to Charlottesville and for his service here. And we'll allow him to introduce and have comments and discussion as he sees fit.
Thank you, Chairman Brown. Good evening, members of the public, board members, and my colleagues. Before I provide an overview of some of my plans for assisting with the organizational and administrative infrastructure of the CRB, I'd like to provide a brief introduction of who I am and my philosophy as a civilian oversight practitioner. As was noted, my name is Hansel Aguilar, and I was recently appointed as the executive director of the PCRB. In this role, I will be providing administrative support to the board to ensure it can fulfill its goal and provide an objective and independent civilian-led oversight of Charlottesville to enhance transparency and trust, to promote fair and effective policing, and to protect the civil and constitutional rights of the people of the city of Charlottesville. This is a role that I'm honored and humbled to have been afforded by the city manager, the city council, and the boards and the board members. A role that has been made possible by the hard work of community members devoted to social justice in this community. I am confident that my perspective and lived experience as a person of color, raised in an urban US city, as a patrol officer, as a civilian investigator of police misconduct, as an inaugural panelist on the civilian review panel, and as a public sociologist, will enable me to assist and advise the board as it navigates its infancy and prepares to transition into a new hybrid model of civilian oversight. As a practitioner of civilian oversight in various jurisdictions and a member of NACO, the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, I have been taught and have experienced that every jurisdiction must consider the local context to ensure they have the best model and mechanism for addressing their unique needs. In other words, while there are certainly trends and patterns on a national level where policing can improve, it is equally important to keep in mind each community's needs. So in that fashion, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the current events and collective trauma this community has faced since the summer of hate. The ripple effects being experienced are evident. And I also know that the event is not the only incident that has caused trauma for some community members here. I understand the moment in time I'm arriving in the city and the challenges that lie ahead. I believe that civilian oversight agency with a strong foundation can restore some of the trust and transparency issues experienced in the community. However, I also know that that the civilian oversight agencies are not a panacea to all policing issues. A concerted effort must be taken from all sectors of society in order to achieve police reform and the reimagination of the profession. I'm committed to working with the community, my colleagues in City Hall, elected officials, and the police department to ensure we continue to move in the right direction in this arena. In these first 3 weeks on the job, I've had the opportunity to meet with and talk with various stakeholders in the community, to include members of the initial CRB, members of the current CRB, activists, my City Hall colleagues, various city councilors, and the CPD command staff. While I understand for some members of the community, the future of civilian oversight in the city may seem grim, for me, in the tradition of many pragmatic ideals before me, I'm encouraged by the common ground and the values I'm seeing this community holds. The real task is to ensure we have a reliable vehicle to get to our destination. As a public servant, I know that the community's public trust in this position and in me will not be given away freely. I just humbly ask for the opportunity to earn it. Now to discuss more logistical and administrative matters, I would like to inform the board and the community of some activities I've been engaging in over the past few weeks that will assist the board in its efficiency. Specifically, I want to make sure we have the correct infrastructure to allow us to communicate and to work effectively while we're not seeing each other on a regular basis. So utilizing the current tools that we have, I've been discussing with the city manager, city attorney, and the IT department a way that we can have a very confidential manner to share information. And right now, utilizing Microsoft Teams seems like a really important tool for us for 3 specific domains, which would be internal collaborations, communications, and education and training. I am putting together a very strong program and curriculum that I'll be presenting to the board, and also be working one-on-one with the board members to make sure we can all navigate Microsoft Teams and the different tools available to us. In addition to that, I've been working on developing a strong outreach and public relations program to ensure the board is meeting with and hearing from community stakeholders. I know right now with the pandemic, we're facing many obstacles in being able to have in-person events, but there are ways we can continue to reach out to community and educate and raise awareness about the services provided by the CRB. So I've been identifying various strategic partners and will be coordinating with them to raise awareness about the board's work. The plan will ensure it has community outreach to historically marginalized communities and sectors of the city. I appreciate this time allotted to me, and I'll be happy to address any questions and concerns from the board at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Aguilar. Vice Chair Mendez.
You want, Nancy, are you?
I have about the outreach. There's a lot going on with 2 of the groups in this community, the Buck Squad and Peace in the Streets. And I was wondering if those were 2 community stakeholder partners that you considering aligning with in order to, create some educational content.
Thank you. Yes, I am familiar with those groups, and I'm learning more about the different community organizations. I do believe having strategic partners to serve as force multipliers, it's going to help the board get its community outreach and be able to educate community members. So I do believe that there are a lot of strategic partners we can explore. Again, I'm going to put a more detailed plan together, and I'm open to any suggestions and any amendments that the board will have.
Vice Chair Mendez.
Yeah, one of the other things that we have discussed, which I think is worth mentioning tonight also, Hansel, is the attempt to upgrade the computer software that is currently in use to receive and process complaints. Part of the problem with the lack of transparency is the fact that there is none right now. So maybe you could say that a little bit more. Say something about that.
Sure, and thank you for bringing up that point. In different jurisdictions, they have their own mechanisms by which they are processing complaints from community members. I have been meeting with my counterparts in internal affairs, and we are discussing ways that we can identify a program and a software that would work for all of us. There is one particular software that I'm trying to arrange a demo for, and I believe it's one of other programs that we can potentially explore. But the main point is to make sure we have a systematic way to receive complaints from the community members, and for IA to be storing that information, but also a systematic way to ensure that the board has access to these files. And in my experience, I think a virtual electronic solution, it would be the best route. But again, we're working in concert with the internal affairs and with members of CRB to ensure we have the best solution.
Welcome aboard, Hansel, and thank you so much for your efforts to get to this point.
Are there any?
I was going to say, glad you're here. Welcome aboard. It's been a long road. We did a lot for a long time without all the necessary parts, and so glad you're here. Glad Miss Marshall's here as well as Miss Hudson, because I think we went about a year almost without any of your all of your talent. So and I commend all the board for really hanging in there. I mean, everybody on here pretty much minus one or two people have been here since the beginning, and it's been a long road, but now we have with you in place and the team that we have, we'll be able to be substantially more impactful. So definitely look forward to working with you. And I know I have been a little bit out of the loop lately, but definitely looking forward to the future. Thank you.
I also want to say that welcome to Charlottesville and welcome to the Civilian Review Board, and looking forward to seeing how you organize and support this board going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just echo what the other members have said and welcome you, Hansel, and look forward to working with you, and appreciate the experience and the portfolio that you bring. So welcome.
As I've stated earlier, my welcome as well. Are there any additional comments or questions? Very well. The next item on the agenda is the assistant chief comments and discussion. And I know that Ms. Carpenter, you were looking for a particular assistant chief, and obviously that's transition. So we do have Major Durrett. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to explain why I had contacted Major Mooney a couple of weeks ago. When you have when I can.
Sure. I mean, yeah, you can go ahead.
Oh, thank you. The reason I contacted Major Mooney is that in November 2019, a second resolution allowed for the Civilian Review Board to review certain policies, identified policies out of the police manual. And one of those, and we're supposed to be notified a timeline about notification before any changes are made. And I know that Chief Brackney had sent us something probably a year ago, I think. Does that sound about right? She sent an amendment to us a year ago. So I thought that was some work. And now we have the executive director that is doing that kind of administrative support. Perhaps we as a board can figure out how to move that work forward, because in having a conversation with Chief Mooney, he said that the language in those particular sections policies were a little outdated, which I was hoping he was going to be able to share tonight, but that's not going to happen. And so with Major Durrett being here, that I wanted to also let him know what the conversation was, and what my idea for going forward and doing some other kind of work that this board is also tasked with doing is perhaps at some point start looking at doing that as we move through this pandemic, and hopefully the spring will look a lot better. Thank you.
Very well. And I will say congratulations to Major Durrett on his new role. And Mr. Wheeler, if you would, I guess, transition Major Durrett to panelist so that he's able to answer any questions or have conversation with the board. Major Durrett, I believe that yes.
Good afternoon, members of the board and the public. I didn't prepare anything. I was planning to just sit back and listen, but I've had the opportunity these last 4 days to meet with Hansel. We've had some very good dialogue. In that short time, I've introduced him to our IA. I look forward to working with the board here to make sure we hold our officers accountable. So, and that's where I'll leave it at this time. But I've been with the police department for 31 years now, and I've seen it on all spectrums. So I appreciate what you're trying to accomplish, and I'm willing to work along to make sure there's justice across the board.
Very well.
I'll take any questions.
I would just say,
Go ahead, Dr. Fraser.
Congratulations, Major, and thank you for showing up tonight and for stepping up and your willingness to work with us. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, just one quick question. As we move forward, Major, we're going to have, interim documents, questions, policy issues. Is there someone on your staff who is delegated to deal with that, or should we work directly with you?
At this time, I work directly with me, and then we'll farm those out to my colleagues to make sure you get the information that you may need.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions or comments for Major Durrett? Yes, Member Watson.
Hey, Major Durrett, how you doing?
I'm well.
So probably a pretty big general question, but we all know that there's a lot of trust that needs to be built with our group and even with the police. And are there 2 or 3, I don't know, actions or processes that the CPD, and I know you just kind of got thrown into this job in the last week or 2, but and I know there's a lot going on right now in Charlottesville as far as violence and things like that, but what are some of the maybe the strategies that you want to employ in your time to help build trust and maybe do things differently that you might have seen 10 years ago or so many years back before Chief Brackney was here?
I just talked to and with my staff and the department. We're always talking about rebuilding or trying to rebuild this. This community is hurting, and we need to start some courtship first to establish that relationship. Because I hear people, I understand that they don't trust us, and it's an opportunity for us to fix that by having some dialogue with everybody. I'm asking my officers to do the right thing, the philosophy of 21st century policing, and directing them that way. Treat people fair, equitable, courtesy, kind. They're humans, and that's where I want them to be.
Got another question? Are you guys able to? Well, so it's my perception. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's my perception that the CPD is short right now on staff. I don't know how many people. Are you all doing some recruiting in the area? It's one of my other beliefs is I know you're from Charlottesville, that recruiting people from the area, and I know you're not required to recruit anybody from any one area, but as I've met people here and there, I know a lot of people come to Charlottesville from like Culpeper and Augusta County and driving real far. And I'm always wondering, is there any active effort to try to get some kids out of Charlottesville High School and out of K-Tech and, people that grow up in various neighborhoods to come back and already be familiar with the neighborhoods and what's going on in the neighborhoods and already have that street cred already built up. So I'm just
we've had a really good relationship with Piedmont Community College, and trying to focus on homegrown folks, because they'll know the community. But across this nation, law enforcement is becoming a challenge recruiting, and that's not just here; it's across this country. But we are still actively trying to have the same demographics of our community, but it is a task. So we're out there looking, and we're going to have the right people on board. Even though we're short, as long as I'm driving, I'm not going to just fill it just to be filling numbers, because I'd rather have quality versus quantity.
Um, very well. On that, on the driving part, and I don't know if this is accurate or not. I mean, this is, I guess, something that I had seen that was presented by Councilor Snook, a comment that says, "Don't be surprised about a change in the spring." Is are you able to speak to that, or is that not correct?
I'm eligible to retire in June, but
Okay.
Very well.
Yep.
that's all I know.
Very well. What is this? Is this panelist? And then I see Ms. Carpenter. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just, going forward as we go through the budget season, here in the city, and the CRB is tasked with looking at, the police budget, will we be able to have some, back and forth and some, collaboration with, being able to get those documents and, review that like we, like our task is, and we kind of have not done that because we've been trying to work through without having the support that we need, the executive director, our general counsel and things like that. So I'd like to ask the major if that's going to be an ask we can make here soon. And also I hope that we can work together on the policies that the board can review.
Major Durrett, I do see Manager Marshall's, and this is the same thing that I was thinking, because I think that Manager Marshall's office does handle that budget aspect, so I'll allow her to go ahead and take that.
Well, good evening, everyone. And Ms. Carpenter, that is a fantastic question. Please know that we are working very hard hand in hand with our budget office to make that budget more accessible. We know that it exists on the website, but our website is honestly kind of difficult. It's buried and it's not very helpful. So please know that we are working to create a technology-based solution for this. It's not quite ready, but it hopefully will be. We've got some expertise that is super helpful for us to be able to do that. And also, as long as we are able to do it, it is easy to use, which is really what I appreciate. And so as your chairman just mentioned, we will be going into our budgeting season. It is a long and joyous season, but what will end up happening is that we work first to create the department budget. So I will work with Mr. Aguilar as well as your chair to make sure we're going to make it appropriate budget for the PCRB, as well as I'm always happy to help Major Durrett as well, along with Deputy City Manager Sanders with the police budget. And then that budget has to be first approved by our city manager and then goes to council. So I will make sure that you all are there every step of the way. And also that to make sure you all know what the budget schedule is going to look like so that you all can voice input at those public meetings as well as here. Because of course, ultimately, we will suggest the moon, but it is up to our council to determine what is best for our city in the next fiscal year. And so I hope I will have some goodies for you soon. And I will also make sure, along with Mr. Aguilar, that you all are well aware of the dates and where we are in the process so that you can definitely review, participate, and give your input in on that budget. It is important, and we appreciate you all being willing to slog through the numbers with us.
Very well. Are there, Ms. Carpenter, you still have a question? Okay. Are there any additional questions for Major Durrett? Seeing as you have none, again, Major Durrett, congrats on your promotion, and thank you for your time in our meeting this evening.
Thank you for the time and the opportunity. I'm humbled.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wheeler, I believe that we are now at our second public comment section. Could you poll the audience for public comment?
Thank you. If you're in the audience, you'd like to address the PCRB, please click the raise hand icon in the Zoom webinar. Each speaker will get up to 3 minutes. First up is Katrina Turner. Katrina, you're on with the PCRB and you've got 3 minutes.
Yes. How are you all doing? welcome, Mr. Aguilar. I just want to talk about a disturbing email from Chairman Brown, and I believe it was communicating with Council Member Heather Hill. He wrote, "Do you guys really thought a white trans woman, an Egyptian, and a Hispanic guy were the best qualified to be executive director of this Black community over a Black native with excellent qualifications? So when he welcomed you, Mr. Aguilar, from what he read, he really doesn't feel like you're qualified enough over him to be executive director. Mr. Brown has been making so many disparaging remarks. He even made the remark that white supremacy did not get the chief fired, that he did. He made the remark of core members of the Pcrb, and we have yet for him to tell us who the core members of this Pcrb is. So Mr. Brown needs to start telling the truth a little bit, because right now, from this email that you wrote, you were very, very disrespectful to many, many people. And you should not be chair of this CRB. And shame on you, Mr. Frazier, because there's also an email that you wrote to, what is his name, Bill? Or Jeff Frazier and Bill, whichever. There's also an email where you're asking him to recall his words when he asked for Chairman Brown to be, what was that vote that y'all voted? No confidence on him? There's also an email about that. So you all need to really think about who you have for the chair of this CRB board. Because for one thing, if you're the executive director of the CRB,
Ms.
you're
Turner,
not
I
the
believe,
executive director of this community, and that means me. Thank you.
very well, Mr. Wheeler. Go ahead.
If anyone else would like to address the board, please click the raise hand icon. Next up is Andrew Shelton. Andrew, you're on with the CRB. You've got 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you for your time. I don't particularly want to rehash the many concerns that are out here in the community about Mr. Brown as the chair of the CRB, but I would like to note that I watched the vote at the last meeting, and it struck me as extremely inappropriate that not only were we unwilling to wait for one of the members to join so that she was able to cast her vote, but that Mr. Brown actually cast a vote in favor of himself in a vote of no confidence. I'm not aware of the procedural rules, but that strikes me as just inherently inappropriate. And I think it's just one more thing that really should be on y'all's minds when you're contemplating moving forward in this board that is supposed to have the trust of the community. And we see what's happening. I'd like y'all to really consider that. Thank you.
And anyone else who'd like to address the CRB? Next up is Don Gathers. Don, you're on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes.
I just want to, well, first of all, Mr. Aguilar, welcome to the community. I wish you well. I wish you much success, and I wish you much luck and Godspeed. I just want to echo the sentiments of Ms. Turner. Many in the community were very disturbed by the posting, Mr. Brown, because it was disparaging to so many different groups. The LGBTQ community, the women. I mean, it touched it struck a nerve with so many different people, and I'm really equally concerned that you all haven't had a discussion about that during this meeting. I can't believe that you all are not aware of that being out there. It's not even the elephant in the room, it's the whole herd of elephants. And I just, again, I'm peeping in the window from the outside, but I would just think that discussion should be had. And I asked a question during you all's last meeting about the statement made by Chairman Brown that the 4 core members, and I was wondering who they are, who we consider them to be, and I still never got that question answered. So I would love some clarity and explanation on that as well, if at all possible. Thank you all very much.
And anyone else at this time? I don't see any additional hands.
Very well. The next item on the agenda is Code of Ethics and the member rules discussion. I believe that Vice Chair Mendez, did you want to open that up?
Yeah, I just wanted to, thank you, Chair Brown. I just wanted to present some options to the board as we go forward. You know, the whole plan of the ordinance was that to make among other things, make the board free from sort of political or personal interference with its membership. And so the new ordinance says that if it ever gets to be approved, says that members can be discharged for cause only. In our operating procedures, we're going to have to specify what those causes are. And, you know, there are a lot of ways to do it. And many oversight organizations have exactly the same kind of provision. What I have sent in our package so that the public could review it and that we could review it, just 2 documents. We don't need to discuss them. We just need to be ready to think about whether we want something like that when we do move forward with our operating procedures. The first is the Fairfax County Civilian Review Panel Code of Ethics, which draws on the NACOL Code of Ethics, the American Association of Public Administration Ethics Statement, and the Marine Corps Principles, believe it or not, which calls for us all to be courageous and honorable. And I think that's a very good formulation. The thing is, it's kind of vague and very hard to operationalize. And so I have also sent around something that is titled Rules for Board Members, which is you know, a most preliminary proposal. It's adapted from policies of the Salt Lake City Civilian Review Board, and it is much more specific. It talks about how board members can avoid conflicts of interest. They can avoid engaging in discussions, independent discussions, private discussions of cases that are before the board, avoiding bias, and so on. So just throw these out there. If anybody has any comments, that's fine. Otherwise, we can wait and talk about this when we do our operating procedures.
Very well. Ms. Carpenter, I see that your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you for recognizing me. I think it's we have some of these because we have, unfortunately witnessed some weaponization of certain words that deal with gender and orientation and race and ethnicity and I guess state of origin. And I think that those will, that it sounds like what this kind of ethics and what this kind of member might be might be beneficial in hoping that doesn't become what we are. Because it's very concerning to me because I have a gay son and I wouldn't want him to be concerned should he ever have to use a not here but a board such as this anywhere else, that his gender or his orientation or whatever would be in the back of somebody's mind as a bias. So I think we should have a really deep discussion of this. And I appreciate Bill bringing it forward to this board, and would certainly like to see that fleshed out as the whatever group comes together to create our new operational procedures. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Frazier.
Yeah, just to pick up a little bit with what Bill and Mr. Mendez and Ms. Carpenter said, I think one of the challenges here is going to be to balance First Amendment considerations with the assurance that we as board members are seen by the public as unbiased. For instance, I don't think we should be seen as pro or anti-police. I don't think our members should be out protesting the police. I don't think they should be taking, carrying signs and so forth. And nor should they be, trashing the community, the minority community, the POC community, the gay community, and anyone else. So notwithstanding First Amendment concerns, I think we have to comport ourselves in a way that conveys a neutrality and a respect for all sides. And I think that has not always been the case in the past. We have had instances of public protests, which I think show bias, and I think it's contrary to our mission and to our public perception.
Mr. Vice Chair Mendez.
Yeah, I would just like to take a little bit of exception to what Dr. Frazier said, and I think it's okay for us to carry signs. It's okay as long as they don't deal with issues that are before the board or that display, a fundamental disregard for, the dignity of anybody. Thank you.
No,
I'm sure that's what he meant.
It is what I meant, Mr. Mendez. I meant, that we should respect First Amendment issues provided that it doesn't bear on the work of the board directly.
Mr. Watson.
I've got a few different thoughts jumbling around in my head. Yeah, we definitely need a code of ethics. There's things that, like with cases that we're going to, or hearings that we're going to have, I think that, we probably shouldn't be by ourselves talking to the complainant. Just offhand, I would think we would need two people. We probably don't want to be talking to that person's lawyer by ourselves. We don't want to be engaging in things that don't allow for trust amongst each other, let alone the public, right? And I know all you guys are here because you love this community, because you've seen wrong over the years. But what I've learned over the last year and a half, it's easy to see something as a simple action that you want to do to, get to that point where we're making a difference. But it's so easy to do something that really ends up being a mistake. I know Bellamy, you love this community. I would like to hear from you, maybe a little bit of an explanation of maybe some of your language. You're an incredibly smart guy. Again, I know you love the community, but you got some a little bit of explaining, for folks, with that, because we don't want this cloud over us, right? We don't want this cloud. We can't be effective if nobody trusts us. In your case, you've got another 70 days and then we'll have a new chair. But I also wouldn't want to see you tarnished for all the hard work you're putting in. So maybe you can explain a little bit of kind of your statements.
Sure, that's fair. So with regard to the whole, speaking to complainants, I've never spoken to a complainant. With regard to the complainant's attorney, there was a conversation where we were logistically trying to set up a hearing and information was volunteered. It wasn't solicited. It was given during that conversation of trying to set up the hearing. It's not my fault the attorney presented that information. He did that on his own. Our conversation was about the logistics of trying to set up his hearing. The other comments that are being misrepresented by some in the public were taken from a private conversation that was FOIA'd by Chief Brackney and then passed along to members of the public to do whatever it is that they did with them. With regard to everything else that's taken place here, and so that I can speak freely, I will not elaborate further on that, but we'll do so at a later date. That doesn't impede the work of this board, and I will elaborate fully, to the fullest extent, and I believe everything will be made clear at that point in time. Are there any additional questions or comments? Very well. Ms. Carpenter and Mr. Watson, your hands are both still raised. Okay.
Technology glitch.
Very well. So before we go to the last public comment section, again, are there any additional comments or discussion? Seeing as none, Mr. Wheeler, could you poll the audience?
So this is the last opportunity to address the CRB this evening. If you'd like to get in line, please click the raise hand icon. First up is Katrina Turner. Katrina, you're back on with the CRB. You've got 3 minutes.
That is not acceptable. The explanation you just gave Mr. Brown is not acceptable, especially the comment you made to Heather Hill. It is not acceptable that you will not explain that comment when one of those people were Hispanic. Mr. Aguilar, may I ask what your race is? May I ask what your race is, Mr. Aguilar? Because he disrespected you. And you, Bill, Jeff, James, you all to let this man sit on this board after the disrespect that he has shown. You all need to do something. He needs to explain himself. He doesn't need to wait. Why wait for an explanation? He said those words and he needs to explain himself. You all ought to be ashamed of yourself to allow him not to speak up and say why he is talking about members of this board and members of this community. Now, if you all want people to trust you all, you need to do the right thing and get rid of Mr. Brown. No matter how you feel about what work he did, he has tarnished this board. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's anyone else who'd like to address the CRB, now is the time. Click the raise hand icon. Next up is Gloria Beard. Gloria, you're on. You've got 3 minutes.
Yeah, I sat here and listened, and I couldn't be quiet. Mr. Brown and I had a conversation ourselves, online on Facebook, but I did call him a sellout because that's the way I felt at the time, and because he was wrong. Because I've been following him too. I follow everybody that's supposed to be in power, and when he was talking about the mayor and the chief, I don't care what those women did. He bashed them and bragged about what he did. I seen that with my own 2 eyes. And to make this work, I'm gonna tell y'all, I'm all for it because I helped write the bylaws, the first bylaw. I'm all for my community because I have grandkids and I have Black men as sons. I want this to work before I die, and you cannot have this kind of stuff. You got to apologize, Bellamy. You need to apologize in person. Claim it. You did it. I called you a sellout. I'm claiming it. Yes, I did. I had other words on my mind. I made it sound good. Please do that. You a Black man. You know what we go through, what I've lived through. I'm 71 years old. I've been through the race stuff all my life. So apologize to these people. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to address the CRB? Next up is Adrian Dent. Adrian, you're on. You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. I wasn't going to speak either, but I wanted to follow up on something that Mr. Watson suggested, or maybe I misunderstood, but it felt like a potential discussion of having a town hall meeting or something a little more public. And I was wondering if anything had continued with that conversation. And I also just want to point out what's really obvious, or seems so obvious to me, is like your job is to operate with discernment and hold other people accountable in the community that have been given power and authority. And there's not a sense that everyone in this committee is showing up with that same regard for accountability. And it's a real shame to see that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other hands? And if while we're waiting to see if anyone else raises their hand, I'd be happy to address public meetings and town halls with the CRB. If you're interested in that, just let me know.
Very well, thank you, Brian.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see any other hands.
Okay. Mr. Watson, did you?
I was just gonna, I noticed that Ms. Gilmore popped in. Just wanted to know if she wanted to say anything tonight. Don't know if you can hear us. Can you hear us, Ms. Gilmore?
Yes, I can hear. I'm just listening.
How you doing?
I'm good.
That's good. Okay, just wanted to know if you had any comments or anything at this point.
No.
All right, thank you.
Are there any additional comments or questions from the board? Seeing as none, is the next item on the agenda is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? Dr. Frazier, had a second, or is that a question, or did you want to?
That's a second.
Okay, very well. Ms. Robinson, could you pull the board?
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter,
Yes.
Ms. Gilmore,
Yes.
Dr. Frazier,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
and Mr. Watson.
Yes.
Very well. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you all have a good evening.
Thank you.
Aye.